I don't know if any of you got to see what the subject was going to be tonight because it was on social media, but um, it wasn't on email, so I didn't get it. But the title of it was The Journey of an Aversive, with questions like, why do we tend to act or react in a particular way? And what tendencies underlie our thoughts, words, and actions? And can Buddhist practice have an effect on this? So that's what it said. You might have seen it if you went through social media, but this idea of being aversive is, of course, very interesting to me ever since I learned it, which, of course, I didn't learn it when I was a child, but I'll have something to say about that. I think before going into talking about any of this, we can do some meditation practice. And I thought of doing an experiment with you. I hope you're up for an experiment. I want us to think of doing maybe what I think an aversive would do, which is to do something completely different and maybe not follow the rules exactly. I'm going to try to adjust my screen here because some of you are cut off. I don't know why that's happening, but so we always want to start with having an intention of just being here with whatever shows up. We talked about the future, and I know my immediate reaction was, what? Talk about the future? Isn't this practice about being present here now? It's still fun to go out into the future. But that's the point. The point is to stay here now because this is where life happens right now. It doesn't happen in the past and it doesn't happen in the future. Right now can be pleasant, can be unpleasant, it can be neither. It can be challenging. It can be painful, physically, emotionally. And so it's not an easy practice. We have to renew our intention to be here over and over and over again. So often we're told to bring as much relaxation to our body and our heart and mind as possible. We're told to be upright, but relaxed at the same time, because that allows the possibility of staying awake and present. We're told to relax our shoulders, relax our jaw, relax our hands, our arms, our legs, our whole body. Sometimes I notice in prison, the men don't pay any attention to those directions. They lean over, they slouch, they do things that look to me like they'd be very uncomfortable. Have you ever had the urge to do it differently, to see what would happen if you leaned on your elbow, or if you decided to try slouching, or tried to just be off balance? Even though it seems really weird, just for a short time, make yourself be unbalanced, slouching, slouch way down in your chair, something that seems like an impossible position to maintain. And just as an experiment, let's just do this for a few minutes and see what happens. It may take a while. And if you care to, you can add extra tension. You can squeeze your hands into fists. You can clench your jaw. You can squeeze your shoulders or raise them up tensely. You can even embellish it by constricting your breathing. And then slowly, one thing at a time, release the grip if you squeezed your hands. Release the shoulders if you've raised them and squeezed them. Release the jaw. And bring yourself up to an upright sitting position. Feet are on the floor or folded in one over the other in sitting position on the floor. You're sitting upright, but allowing the structure of your body to hold you up, not your muscles. Extend the back of your head up, the crown of your head, and let the jaw drop slightly. And don't constrict the breathing, let it be as it is. It was an exaggeration, but we all have places in our body where we hold tension. And it's so easy during meditation practice to tense those areas, even if it's just slightly. So it's skillful to come back over and over and over again to the shoulders, releasing them, to the jaw, opening the teeth, to the facial muscles, releasing, to the hands and fingers, softening. Creating the possibility for deep breathing and deep relaxation. So let's just sit for a while, and I'll ring the bell when we're done. So see if you can take a little scan of your body, including places that perhaps you do hold tension. How are they doing during this practice? No problem going back over and over again, checking this out. Softening, relaxing, making the possibility of staying here in the present more possible. So in just a minute, I'm going to ring the bell to end this sitting. And when I do, take time to come back. Take time to open your eyes, sit up a little straighter, stretch, look around. Don't come out of your practice quickly. Just take your time. So I'd like to tell you some stories. Kind of a breakthrough time for me was a few years after I started this Buddhist practice. I'd had another practice before, and I decided to go on a 6-week retreat at Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts. And I had no particular expectations for what was going to happen to me, but something disturbing was going on. And that was that as I was in my dorm room, somebody was opening and shutting the door, slamming it, making a lot of noise. It sounded like this person was wearing combat boots, walking through the hallways, really loud, very irritating. And especially I thought, wait a minute, this is a silent meditation retreat. What's going on here? Fortunately, I had an interview soon after that with one of the teachers, which happens periodically. And I told her about it. And she said, well, of course this is happening. You're an aversive. I never knew I was an aversive before. Maybe I did, but I didn't have a word for it. Someone who reacts negatively, just as a proclivity, just as that's the way one of my reactions is. And one of the teachers, and I think maybe it was even before this, said, you can tell what personality type you are. Or you can tell what somebody is, because if they walk in a room that they've never seen before and they see a lot of things that they want to get, they're a greedy type. If they instead notice the things they don't like, then they're an aversive type. And if they walk into this room and don't really notice or react to anything, they may be a delusional type. So it was said a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's a very general way of noticing personality types. And maybe you could think for a moment, let's see, what type am I? And also just to give a little notion that we all have everything. We all have greed, we all have aversion, we all have delusion, but it's just what's that first reaction? I can't answer, I can't hear what you're thinking, but I hope something is coming up for you. this teacher did not say, oh, we're going to write a notice and make sure everybody is more quiet. She didn't say, we'll find out who this person is and have a talk with him or her. Nothing of the sort. It said, oh, you're an aversive. That's natural. And for me, it was like a breath of fresh air. It was a relief. I thought, okay. It's okay to be aversive. It's okay to be greedy. It's okay to be delusional. The point is, of course, to notice it. To notice it. We hear this all the time in so many teachings. No matter what it is, the first thing to do is to recognize it. And you don't have to try to get rid of it. You don't try to exile it. You don't have to hate it. You don't have to think you're a terrible person. Oh, God, I'm always reacting negatively. What's wrong with me? No, that's not the practice. The practice is to be kind to that reaction. I remember hearing Thich Nhat Hanh saying, when anger comes up, you can hold that anger in your arms as if it were a baby and say, oh, my little anger, I'll take care of you. That's a different approach than exiling it, hating it, judging yourself, thinking you're a bad person. So I did work with this during that retreat. I don't remember exactly what I did, but I have a feeling what I did was to use metta, which is one of the antidotes for anger or hatred. I used metta, and this person, whoever he was or she was my difficult person for a while. And I also stopped hearing the clomping and the door slamming as anything but sound. And I tried to listen to the silence too. So there's that balance maybe of sound and silence. I think it did calm things down. And I just sort of resolved that I'm going to keep looking at this. I'm not going to let that get away that easily again. A couple of years later, I was on a different retreat with a different teacher, and the stairs were outside of the residence halls, and there was somebody again clomping down the stairs, making quite a bit of noise. And I remembered what happened. I thought, I'm not gonna, hate this person or not like them or really be agitated because of that clumping down the stairs noise. And I think I was able to let it go. And I found out afterwards, or I noticed afterwards, I observed afterwards, it was the teacher doing it. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. I didn't project that irritation or that anger or whatever it was toward that teacher. So, though I could tell a whole lot of stories, and maybe I will some more later, but what I wanted to say about this, there are two things. There's something in Buddhist practice called anusaya. That's a Pali word. And it's translated as latent tendencies, or like sleeping tendencies. And they're more than just greed, hatred, and delusion. But the most amazing thing about this was in this particular sutta, it talked about a baby, a young baby lying on his or her back. An innocent baby has these tendencies. It's not something he intends, something that he's observed, but he has a tendency toward sensuality, toward aversion, toward delusion, toward all these things before very early on. So I thought that was pretty amazing. A baby who doesn't talk, who doesn't, as far as you know, communicate in any kind of a cognitive way, wouldn't have learned anything about that, but it still happens. And what it reminded me of, and as a parent, I hope you, if you were a parent or a grandparent, I hope you become aware of this, that children, all of us, are born with what are called temperamental characteristics. Has anybody ever heard of that before? In those words? And there was, this is from research long ago, but there were about 10 characteristics that children are born with. It's not that they can't be changed. It's not that they don't alter somewhat, but some of them are they're steady throughout life. And this to me maps onto anusaya, those latent tendencies. So for me, I didn't know this, of course, as a child. I was told by my mother that I used to cry like crazy if light got into my crib. If a beam of sunlight or something got into my crib. Well, where did that come from? It was one of those latent tendencies, an overstimulation by the light. One of the temperamental characteristics is your sensory stimulation. If clothing against your skin that's not soft enough doesn't feel right, there are lots of children who experience that. If the light is too bright, if the sound is too loud, don't like a lot of tastes, don't like certain kinds of touch. So these are all things that you come out with. Now we could go back and say, well, why do we come out with that? And I don't know the answer to that, but maybe it's genetics is one of the answers. Maybe all the causes and conditions generationally through the years have created this as conditions, the condition of your mother's womb. Everything adds to this. So yes, I cried because there was too much light. And I remember even as like about a 7 and 8-year-old, I used to have my own room to sleep in, and there'd be a light on out in the hall. And I'd always go out and turn it off because I didn't want there to be any light. So it's just kind of a continuation in another form of that particular sensitivity. And I had definite preferences for taste. And I think a lot of children do, but some have stronger sensitivities to it than others. And maybe that's persisted for you into your adulthood in some way or another. So I'll tell you some of the other characteristics because I think they're interesting as they kind of connect with this sense of latent tendencies. How active you are. You can think of it as a baby, their activity level. Very active versus kind of not so active. That's not positive or negative, but it's the way it is with all these characteristics. If you do recognize them, if you do see them, you can make allowance for them, which is exactly what we do, hopefully, in our meditation practice. When we notice, oh, we pay attention to it. We allow it to be there. We make room for it. Just like what I talked about before, we don't have to exile it. We don't have to judge it. So how much activity? Another one that's very evident with children, young children, is the biological rhythms. How regular are they with their eating, sleeping, toileting, and so on? And of course that persists into adulthood. Not maybe the same way. How intense are the reactions? There's high intensity and low intensity and everything in between. And you could look at yourself to notice, well, let's see, how does that work for me? There's adaptability. How flexible are our children, or are we, to new circumstances, to changing circumstances, to the unforeseen circumstances? More and less at certain times. There's how you approach new people, new experiences, or how you withdraw, and you need a lot of time. You might be quick or you might be slow with this. And again, there's no positive or negative for either one. There's persistence. How long are you willing to work at a task? Or maybe you just have a different rhythm with it. And there's distractibility. How distractible are you? There's mood. What's your general mood? What's the child's general mood? Are you upbeat? Are you pessimistic and not so upbeat? And again, that first one I mentioned, sensory threshold, which is especially interesting to me because I think it's where some of that aversion comes from, being sensitive to certain stimuli. And I've learned for me, there's nothing that's across the board, like whatever you consider positive or whatever you consider not so positive. It's never the same in all of this list of characteristics. It varies, and it varies under certain conditions. And all these things can be changed. I used to be very sensitive to people bumping into me. Bruce likes to tease me about it still, but it went away all by itself. It went away just in the course of practicing. I didn't try to change it, but it went away. And so that's just a very small example of how things can change. And I'd like to tell just another story about this tendency to be negative with our cat, who I love dearly. But she throws up a lot because she has a sensitive stomach, and because Bruce has a origination story about her. She was a rescue cat, so she was found on the streets, but Bruce's story is that she didn't always have food, so when she got it, she'd gorge, and then she'd throw up. So that's the story. That's the story of the cat. But so that was kind of unpleasant, and I had to find a way to not react to that, cleaning up the throw up. That seemed to go well. And then there was, because of that, we have to feed her just a little bit at a time. And so every time we come in the kitchen, she mews to have food because she's hungry. And the mewing was kind of irritating. And I realized I have to change that. I can't, if I'm irritated, it's not going to stop, and it's certainly not good for me, and it's not good for her. And so I found a way to talk to her in a high cat voice and to scratch her and rub her belly, and then she'd stop, and then I could feed her. And I was trying to see if there was oh yeah. There's always something you can find that's irritating if you're an aversive. She also lies in bed and she pushes her back against me and then she starts scratching herself vigorously. So the whole bed shakes, and she shakes and I shake. And so the same thing, I just had to say, well, I don't like that, but so what? And just get used to it and it, just enjoy being with her. So I'm telling you all these stories because I can laugh at all of them now. And I can laugh at my tendency to be irritable. And I hope that it helps you too to do the same thing. To just really, this is the practice itself, being mindful, noticing, allowing, feeling it, letting it be there, letting it be present without having to react to it, without having to make it worse, is the practice. So no matter what you're working with, to do that over and over again has results. And I really would love to hear your results or your reflections on this. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else that I wanted to say. I don't think so. So next time you walk into a room, you notice what you don't like, notice what you do like or want, or don't notice anything at all, you might notice that that's your tendency. Your tendency to be greedy, your tendency to be aversive, or your tendency to kind of tune out, not see things as they are. I think it helps us with non-humans too. Excuse me, it does help with non-humans. It also helps in our relationships with human beings too. To constantly be aware of this. So, and of course there are reasons, which I've mentioned before, for these underlying tendencies. How were your parents? I grew up actually with irritable parents, so I think it was part of my birthright. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful, and I hope it will help you reflect on the dormant tendencies, the sleeping tendencies, and also to appreciate your temperamental characteristics and how they can change to offer more a sense of well-being. So thank you very much.